"Congratulations, you're fired." The words hung in the conference room like smoke. I looked at Trevor Williams, the Chief Executive Officer of Hollowgate Systems, then at the 12 board members seated around the mahogany table. Nobody met my eyes. "My name is Joel. I'm 49 years old, and until 3 minutes ago, I was the Chief Technology Officer of the company I helped build from the ground up. 15 years of my life poured into servers, code, and late nights debugging systems that kept this place running." Trevor had that smug smile he wore when he thought he was being clever. The same expression he had when he took credit for my network security overhaul last year. Or when he announced the merger with Foxlane Innovations without telling me they wanted to gut our entire infrastructure. "I suggest you explain to the investors why the entire system is resetting in 10 minutes, I said, placing my security badge and laptop on the table. The room went quiet. Trevor's smile faltered for half a second before returning full force. "What are you talking about?" he asked. I stood up, straightening my tie. "The automated maintenance protocol I installed last month. Every 30 days, the system performs a complete reset and requires manual authorization from the Chief Technology Officer to restart. That's me. Or rather, that was me." Board member Patricia Hayes shifted in her seat. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means," I continued, checking my watch, "that in approximately 9 minutes, every server, every database, every piece of software that runs this company will shut down, and without my authorization codes, it stays down." Trevor's face had gone pale. "You're bluffing." I walked toward the door, turning back one last time. "The client presentation to Veltri Dynamics starts in an hour. $30 million contract. Might want to figure out how to turn the computers back on." The panic started when I reached the elevator. I could hear shouting through the conference room doors. Someone was already on the phone with information technology. Another voice was calling the legal department. Trevor was yelling something about lawsuits and criminal charges. 8 minutes. The elevator doors closed, and I descended to the parking garage. My truck was parked in the same spot I'd used for 15 years. The same spot Trevor had tried to reassign to his nephew last month, claiming senior staff needed better parking privileges. I sat behind the wheel and waited. 7 minutes. My phone started ringing. I built Hollowgate Systems from nothing. Started in Trevor's garage back in 2009, writing code for small businesses that needed basic inventory management. Trevor handled sales. I handled everything else. We were partners then, or so I thought. The first crack appeared 3 years ago when we landed the municipal contract with Fort Wayne. I designed the entire traffic management system, spent 8 months of 16-hour days making sure every light, every sensor, every backup protocol worked perfectly. When the mayor held the press conference, Trevor stood at the podium alone, taking credit for his team's innovative solution. I should have said something then, should have walked away when he started calling my ideas our vision and my code company property. But I believed in what we were building, believed that good work would speak for itself. My wife Kelly saw it before I did. She'd watch me come home frustrated, talking about meetings where Trevor shot down my suggestions only to present them as his own the following week. She'd listen to me complain about how he was hiring his friends for positions they weren't qualified for, how he was making promises to clients that our systems couldn't deliver. "He's using you," she told me 6 months ago over dinner. "And when he's done, he'll throw you away like yesterday's newspaper." I defended him, said he was just under pressure from the board, that the company was growing too fast, that things would settle down once we got through the busy season. The warning signs were everywhere. Trevor started excluding me from board meetings, claiming they were high-level strategy sessions that didn't require technical input. He hired an assistant chief technology officer named Brandon Miller, fresh out of college, supposedly to help with my workload. Brandon spent most of his time in Trevor's office, learning the systems I'd built, asking questions about protocols I'd never documented. 2 weeks ago, I caught Brandon copying files from my secured folders. When I confronted him, he claimed Trevor had authorized it for backup purposes. When I asked Trevor about it, he gave me some story about preparing for an information technology audit. Last week, Trevor started asking specific questions about my access codes, Said the board was concerned about security protocols, wanted to ensure multiple people could authorize critical functions. I told him I'd think about it. I should have known then what was coming. Should have seen that Brandon wasn't there to help me, but to replace me. Should have realized that every system I'd built, every piece of code I'd written, was being cataloged and prepared for my departure. But I trusted him. After 15 years of partnership, I still believed Trevor Williams was my friend. 5 minutes left. The call I'd been waiting for came exactly on schedule. Trevor's name flashed on my phone screen. "Joel, we need to talk." "No, we don't," I said. "Listen, maybe I was hasty in there. The board's been putting pressure on me, demanding changes, talking about bringing in outside consultants. I was trying to protect you." Protect me. The same lie he'd been telling himself for months. The same excuse he used when he took credit for my work. When he hired Brandon behind my back, when he started cutting me out of decisions about systems I'd designed. "The reset happens in 4 minutes, Trevor." "Okay, look, what do you want? We can work something out. Stock options, a consulting contract, a severance package." I almost laughed. 3 minutes ago, he'd fired me in front of the board like I was some entry-level employee caught stealing office supplies. Now he wanted to negotiate. "I want you to understand something," I said. "For 15 years, I've worked nights and weekends building systems that made you rich. I've covered for your mistakes, fixed problems you created, and watched you take credit for work I did with my own hands." "Joel, I'm not finished. You brought Brandon in to learn my job so you could fire me. You've been planning this for months, maybe longer. The only thing you didn't plan for was this." 3 minutes. Through the concrete walls of the parking garage, I could hear car doors slamming, people running. Someone was probably racing to the server room, thinking they could manually override the shutdown. They couldn't. I'd learned years ago to build redundancies into redundancies, to protect the company's data even from the company itself. "What do you want?" Trevor asked again, and I could hear the desperation creeping into his voice. "I want you to remember this moment," I said. "I want you to remember that for 15 years I was loyal to you. I believed in this company, believed in what we were building together, and you threw it away because you were afraid of looking weak in front of the board." 2 minutes. "The Veltri Dynamics presentation starts in 58 minutes, I continued. $30 million. Without the demonstration system, you've got nothing to show them. Without the client database, you don't even have their contact information." I could hear voices in the background, people shouting instructions, keyboards clicking frantically. "How do I fix this?" Trevor asked. 1 minute. "You don't," I said, and hung up. I started my truck and drove toward the exit. In 60 seconds, every light in the Hologate Systems building would go dark. Every computer would shut down. Every phone system, every security camera, every piece of equipment that kept the company running would stop. And for the first time in 15 years, Trevor Williams would have to solve a problem without me. The shutdown lasted exactly 4 hours and 37 minutes. I knew because I was sitting in Brennan's diner on Coliseum Boulevard, drinking coffee and watching the news coverage on the television mounted above the counter. Technical difficulties plague local software company ran across the bottom of the screen while a reporter stood outside the Hologate building, interviewing confused employees who'd been sent home early. My phone rang constantly. Trevor called 17 times. Brandon called 8. Patricia Hayes from the board called twice. I let them all go to voicemail. At 3:15 p.m., the building lights came back on. I knew they'd found a way to manually restart the core systems, probably by pulling backup drives from the emergency storage and rebuilding the network from scratch. It would take them days to restore everything to full functionality. At 3:47 p.m., my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Turner, this is David Foster from Foster, Collins & Associates. I represent Hologate Systems. We need to discuss your actions today." A lawyer. Trevor was already building a legal case. "I haven't done anything illegal," I said. "Sabotage is a criminal offense, Mr. Turner. Intentionally damaging computer systems, disrupting business operations, causing financial harm to the company. The district attorney might be very interested in your activities." I almost smiled. They thought they could intimidate me with legal threats, the same way Trevor had been intimidating me with job security threats for months. I implemented a security protocol designed to protect company data, I said. The system worked exactly as intended. If Hologate Systems no longer employs qualified personnel to operate their technology, that's not my problem. You deliberately created a situation where you were the only person who could restore operations. I created a situation where the chief technology officer had to authorize system restarts. I was the chief technology officer until approximately 2:30 p.m. today. The lawyer was quiet for a moment. Mr. Turner, I think you're underestimating the seriousness of your situation. The Veltri Dynamics contract was lost due to your actions. $30 million in revenue. Multiple other clients experienced service disruptions. The damages could reach into the hundreds of millions. Hundreds of millions. Trevor must have fed him inflated numbers, hoping to scare me into compliance. The contract was lost because Trevor Williams fired his chief technology officer 10 minutes before a critical presentation, I said. Poor management decisions aren't my responsibility. We have documentation showing you created unauthorized access restrictions, implemented shutdown protocols without board approval, and deliberately withheld information necessary for business operations. Now I understood. They weren't just threatening me with criminal charges. They were building a civil case, claiming I'd sabotaged the company. Trevor was going to sue me for damages, try to take everything I owned, destroy me financially so I could never compete with him. Document this, I said. Any legal action taken against me will result in full disclosure of all Hologate Systems security vulnerabilities to the public. Every backdoor, every unpatched system, every shortcut Trevor approved against my recommendations. Let's see how many clients want to work with a company whose former chief technology officer testifies that their systems are fundamentally insecure. The line went quiet. You're threatening to reveal proprietary information? I'm promising to tell the truth about the company's technical capabilities, under oath if necessary. I hung up and ordered another cup of coffee. 20 minutes later, Trevor called again. Joel, we need to meet. Face to face. No lawyers, no board members, just us. Why? Because this is getting out of hand. Because we used to be friends. Because maybe there's a way to fix this that works for everyone. I thought about it. Trevor was scared now, realizing that legal threats weren't going to make his problems disappear. He needed something from me, and he was finally ready to negotiate from a position of weakness. Brennan's Diner on Coliseum Boulevard, I said. 1 hour. I'll be there. But I already knew he wouldn't come alone. Trevor arrived 43 minutes later with Brandon Miller in tow. I watched them through the diner window, Trevor pacing in the parking lot while Brandon sat in the passenger seat of a black BMW I didn't recognize. Company car, probably. Another perk Trevor had authorized for his new favorite employee. They sat across from me in a corner booth, Trevor looking haggard and Brandon avoiding eye contact. The kid was nervous, probably worried about what his role in today's events might cost him. Coffee? I asked. Trevor shook his head. Let's just get to business. What's it going to take to make this go away? Make what go away? Don't play games, Joel. You know what I'm talking about. The legal threats, the system vulnerabilities, all of it. Name your price. I leaned back in the booth. You think this is about money? Everything's about money. That was Trevor Williams in a nutshell. Everything reduced to dollars and cents, profit margins and quarterly reports. He'd never understood that some people worked for reasons beyond their bank account balance. Tell me something, I said. How long have you been planning to fire me? Trevor glanced at Brandon, then back at me. It wasn't personal. How long? 6 months, maybe 8. The board wanted changes, wanted to bring in younger talent, reduce operational costs. Brandon's salary is 60% of what we were paying you. 8 months. While I was working overtime to prepare for the Veltri Dynamics contract, Trevor was already planning my replacement. While I was training Brandon, thinking I was helping a colleague, he was studying my job so he could take it. Did you ever intend to keep me on as a consultant? I asked. Originally, yes, but then you started asking questions about access protocols, making comments about documentation. The board felt you might become a security risk. A security risk. Because I wanted to protect the systems I'd built from unauthorized access. Because I'd questioned some of Trevor's technical decisions in front of clients. "Show him the contract," Trevor said to Brandon. Brandon pulled a folder from his jacket and slid it across the table. Inside was a consulting agreement offering me $50,000 to provide technical transition assistance for 90 days. "50,000, I said, "for 15 years of institutional knowledge." "It's a generous offer considering the circumstances," Trevor replied. I read through the contract. Standard non-disclosure language, non-compete clauses, and a section requiring me to provide complete documentation and access credentials for all systems and protocols developed during employment. They wanted me to hand over everything, every password, every backdoor, every security measure I'd built to protect the company. And in exchange, they'd pay me what Trevor probably spent on business lunches in a month. "There's one problem with this," I said. "What's that?" "You assume I want to work with you." Trevor's face tightened. "Joel, be reasonable. You're unemployed. You're facing potential criminal charges, and your reputation in this industry is going to be destroyed when word gets out about today. This is your chance to walk away with something." "My reputation?" "Industrial sabotage isn't exactly a selling point for future employers." I smiled and closed the contract folder. "Trevor, do you know who called me this morning?" He looked confused. "What do you mean?" "At 7:30 a.m., before I even got to the office, I received a phone call from James Parker at Veltri Dynamics. He wanted to discuss a position as their new Director of Information Technology. Seems they've been watching my work for months, impressed with the security protocols I designed for municipal contracts." Brandon's eyes widened. Trevor went pale. "The job pays twice what you were paying me," I continued, "plus stock options and a signing bonus." "You're lying," Trevor said, but his voice lacked conviction. I pulled out my phone and showed him the missed call log. 7 missed calls from Veltri Dynamics between 7:30 a.m. and 2 p.m., all from James Parker. "He called back during your little board meeting," I said. "Left a voicemail asking if I was interested in discussing opportunities. Funny thing is, he already knew I was leaving Hollowgate. Said he'd heard rumors that management changes were coming." Trevor's face went white. "That's impossible." "Is it?" "Who's been handling the Veltri contract negotiations for the past 6 months?" The truth hit him like a freight train. Patricia Hayes, the board member who'd been pushing hardest for operational changes, was also the former chief executive officer of Veltri's main competitor. She'd been feeding information to Veltri for months, helping them understand exactly what Hollowgate's capabilities were and who was responsible for them. "Patricia set this up," Trevor whispered. "She's been recruiting me since January," I confirmed. Discreet conversations at industry conferences, casual questions about my satisfaction with current management, subtle hints about better opportunities. I turned her down because I thought I owed you loyalty. Brandon was staring at the table, probably realizing that his new job might not be as secure as he'd thought. If Veltri poached Hollowgate's key technical personnel, they could undercut every contract bid and steal the entire client base. "But today changed my mind," I continued. "When you fired me in front of the board, you made it clear that 15 years of partnership meant nothing, so I called James Parker back." Trevor grabbed his phone. "I need to call Patricia. Need to find out what she's planning." "Too late for that." "What do you mean?" I checked my watch. At 5 p.m. today, Veltri Dynamics is announcing the acquisition of Hollowgate Systems' intellectual property portfolio. They've purchased the rights to our traffic management software, our municipal database systems, and our client integration protocols. "That's impossible. We own those systems." "You own the code. I own the patents." The silence stretched across the table like a chasm. Trevor's mouth opened and closed without sound. Brandon looked like he might be sick. "The patents," Trevor finally managed, "filed in my name over the past 5 years. Every major system upgrade, every security protocol, every piece of innovative code. My lawyer assured me that as the actual inventor, I retained intellectual property rights regardless of employment agreements. It was true. My attorney had advised me years ago to file patents on my major innovations, partly for protection and partly for pride. I'd never imagined I'd need them as leverage against my own company. The traffic management system alone is worth $8 million in licensing fees, I continued. Municipal database integration is worth another $12 million. Security protocols, client management systems, backup redundancies. Veltri estimates the total portfolio value at $37 million. More than the contract Trevor had lost by firing me. More than Hollowgate's annual revenue. Enough to put his company out of business if a competitor controlled the technology. You can't do this, Trevor said. I already did. Signed the licensing agreement an hour ago. Veltri gets exclusive rights to my patents for 5 years. In exchange, I get a director position, equity in their company, and 20% of all licensing revenue. Trevor was staring at me like I'd grown a second head, the same expression he'd worn earlier when I told him about the system reset, the look of a man realizing he'd miscalculated badly. What happens to Hollowgate? Brandon asked quietly. That depends on Trevor, I said. Veltri's willing to negotiate a licensing agreement that would let you continue using my patents. For a fee. How much? 55% of gross revenue. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. The bankruptcy filing came 6 weeks later. I was sitting in my new office at Veltri Dynamics, reviewing system architecture plans for a municipal contract in Phoenix, when my assistant brought me the news. Hollowgate Systems had filed for Chapter 11 protection, citing unsustainable operational costs and loss of key intellectual property rights. Trevor had tried to fight it. He'd hired 3 different law firms, challenged my patent claims, and even attempted to have me arrested for corporate espionage. Nothing stuck. The patents were legitimate, the licensing agreement was ironclad, and my departure from Hollowgate had been entirely his choice. He'd also tried to operate without my systems. For 2 weeks, Brandon and a team of contractors attempted to rebuild the infrastructure from scratch, creating new code to replace the patented algorithms. The results were disastrous. Client databases crashed, security protocols failed, and the traffic management system for Fort Wayne went down for 36 hours, causing chaos throughout the city. The lawsuits followed quickly. Fort Wayne sued for breach of contract. 3 other municipal clients terminated their agreements. Veltri Dynamics, now armed with my proven systems, swept in to capture every abandoned contract. Patricia Hayes resigned from the Hollowgate board 2 days before the bankruptcy filing. She'd already accepted a consulting position with Veltri, helping to integrate acquired assets and transition former Hollowgate clients to new systems. Brandon Miller lasted 3 months before Trevor had to let him go. The kid wasn't qualified for the position he'd been hired to fill, and without my systems to maintain, there wasn't enough technical work to justify his salary. He ended up taking a job with a small startup in Indianapolis, making half what Trevor had promised him. The final blow came when the bankruptcy court approved the asset sale. Veltri purchased Hollowgate's client list, office equipment, and remaining intellectual property for less than Trevor owed in legal fees. The company that had taken 15 years to build was liquidated in a single afternoon. I didn't attend the auction. Instead, I spent that Thursday morning working with my new team on a security upgrade for the Indianapolis airport. Real work, technical challenges that mattered, projects that would be credited to the people who actually designed them. Kelly met me for lunch at a restaurant near the Veltri offices. She'd been supportive through the entire transition, never questioning my decisions, never suggesting I should have handled things differently. Any regrets? She asked over soup and sandwiches. I thought about it. Trevor Williams had destroyed our partnership, betrayed 15 years of trust, and tried to steal credit for my life's work. But his actions had also freed me from a situation that was slowly destroying my passion for the work I loved. None, I said. She smiled. Good. Because James Parker called this morning. He wants to discuss expanding your team. At Veltri, my ideas were valued, my contributions were recognized, and my name appeared on every patent application. The signing bonus had paid off our mortgage. The stock options would fund our retirement. The salary was enough to let Kelly pursue her art full-time, something she'd dreamed about for years. Trevor Williams, on the other hand, was working as a regional sales manager for a software company in Cleveland. I'd heard through industry contacts that he was making about 30% of his former salary, living in a small apartment, and telling anyone who would listen that his former business partner had stolen his company. Brandon Miller had found work debugging legacy systems for a company that specialized in maintaining old software. Patricia Hayes was making more money as a consultant than she'd ever made as a board member, helping other companies navigate acquisition strategies. The truth was simple. Actions have consequences, and eventually everyone pays for their choices. Sometimes it just takes longer than you'd expect.